The Great Chamber of the Galactic Council was the largest structure ever built by intelligent life. It floated in the empty space between three star systems, and its walls were made of crystal that had taken 200 years to grow. Inside this chamber, representatives from 12 different species gathered to discuss matters of trade, territory, and peace. For 300 cycles, this had been the way of things. Every problem could be solved with words. Every conflict could be ended with compromise. War was something that belonged to primitive creatures who had not yet learned the art of negotiation. High Counselor stood at the center of the chamber. He was and his kind had founded the council long before most other species had discovered space travel. His body was tall and thin, covered in scales that shifted color with his mood. Right now, those scales were a calm blue. He had no reason to worry. Today was just another session, another small dispute to resolve. The matter at hand involved the members of the galactic community. Humanity had made first contact with the Council 17 years ago, and in that short time, they had proven themselves to be eager learners. Their ambassador, a man named Daniel Carter, had become a familiar face in these halls. He smiled often, learned the customs of every species, and seemed genuinely happy to be part of something larger than his own world. Like the humans, they reminded him of his own species in its younger days, full of energy, full of curiosity, always asking questions and seeking to understand. They would make fine members of the galactic family, given time to mature. But today there was a problem. The Dominion, one of the older and more powerful members of the Council, had seized a human colony 3 weeks ago. The planet was called 22B in human terms, and 40,000 humans had been living there peacefully until warships arrived in the night. The colonists were taken from their homes and transported to space. No one was killed, but no one was given a choice either. This kind of thing happened from time to time. It was unpleasant, but it was also part of how the galaxy worked. They wanted something from the humans, perhaps mining rights in certain asteroid fields, perhaps access to human technology. By taking the colonists, they had created leverage for negotiation. It was crude, yes, but it was also effective. The council would mediate, both sides would make offers, and eventually everyone would walk away with something they wanted. Had seen this process work hundreds of times. He had no doubt it would work again. The doors at the far end of the chamber opened and the human delegation entered, noticed immediately that something was different. Ambassador Carter was not smiling. His face was calm but hard, like stone that had been polished smooth. Behind him walked a woman in a dark uniform covered with strange symbols and ribbons. Did not recognize her, but he recognized the way she moved. She moved like a predator, alert and ready. The delegation was already present. Their ambassador, Prime, sat in his designated area with 6 advisors around him. He was a large creature with thick armor plates covering his body and 4 arms that ended in sharp claws. His mandibles clicked together as the humans approached, making a sound that his species used to show amusement. "Ah, the young ones have arrived," Prime said. His translator turned his clicks and growls into words that everyone could understand. "I hope they are ready to discuss terms like civilized beings." Ambassador Carter did not respond to the. Instead, he walked to the center of the chamber and faced High Counselor directly. "Thank you for arranging this session, High Counselor," Carter said. His voice was polite but carried no warmth. "However, I must inform the Council that we have not come here to negotiate." A murmur spread through the chamber. Delegates from various species exchanged confused glances, felt his scales shift toward yellow, a sign of concern. "I am not certain I understand, Ambassador," said carefully. "The purpose of this gathering is to facilitate dialogue between your people and the Dominion. The matter of your colonists can certainly be resolved through proper diplomatic channels." "No," Carter said simply, "it cannot." The woman in the uniform stepped forward. Her name was Admiral Morgan, and she commanded the warships of the United Earth Navy. She had been fighting in one conflict or another since she was 22 years old. She had seen friends die. She had made decisions that cost lives and saved lives. She understood the weight of what she was about to say. 3 days ago, Admiral Morgan announced, the United Earth Navy positioned 47 warships at the edge of space. We have complete tactical information on every military installation, shipyard, and command center. We have been gathering this information since the day humanity joined this council. The chamber went silent. Even the translators seemed to pause, as if they could not believe what they were processing. The Dominion has 12 hours to return every single colonist taken from 22B, Morgan continued. They must be returned unharmed, with no conditions attached. If this deadline passes without compliance, the United Earth Navy will begin military operations against targets. There will be no further warnings. There will be no further communication. Prime rose from his seat, his 4 arms spreading wide in a gesture of disbelief. You threaten us. You dare to threaten the Dominion. We are one of the founding members of this council. We have fleets that could crush your entire species. Admiral Morgan looked at him. Her expression did not change. Then you should not have taken our people, she said. High Counselor stepped forward, his scales now bright orange with alarm. Ambassador Carter, Admiral Morgan, please understand the gravity of what you are proposing. War has not occurred between council members in over 200 years. The cost in lives, in resources, in stability, it would be catastrophic for everyone involved. Daniel Carter finally turned to address the council as a whole. His eyes moved across the chamber, taking in every species, every delegate, every expression of shock and confusion. They took 40,000 of our people from their homes, he said. They took children from their beds. They took mothers from their families. They took fathers from their sons and daughters. They did this without warning, without cause, without any attempt at communication. And now you ask us to sit at a table and bargain for their return, as if they were cargo to be traded. He shook his head slowly. We will not do this. Humanity will not do this. Our people are not bargaining chips. They never will be. The chamber remained frozen in stunned silence as the human delegation stood firm, waiting for the countdown to begin. The council called an emergency recess. Delegates scattered in every direction, their voices filling the corridors with urgent conversations. In all the centuries the council had existed, nothing like this had ever happened. Species disagreed all the time. They argued, they threatened, they made demands. But in the end, they always came back to the table. They always negotiated. That was how civilized beings behaved. The humans were not behaving like civilized beings. High Counselor retreated to his private office, a small room overlooking the main chamber. His advisors gathered around him, speaking rapidly in their native tongue before switching to the common language for clarity. They cannot be serious, said advisor, a younger whose scales flickered nervously between colors. No species would risk war over such a small number of individuals. The mathematics simply do not support such a decision. Stared out the window at the stars beyond. He had lived for 400 years, and he had seen many strange things in that time. But he had never seen anything quite like the look in Ambassador Carter's eyes when he announced that humanity would not negotiate. I believe they are completely serious, said quietly. That is what frightens me. In another corridor, Counselor of the was having a similar conversation with her own delegation. They were in species, their bodies covered in hard shells and their faces dominated by large compound eyes that saw in every direction at once. Had served on the council for 60 years, and she prided herself on understanding the psychology of other species. But the humans confused her. I must speak with them directly, she decided. Perhaps there is something we are missing, some cultural factor we have failed to consider. She found Ambassador Carter in a quiet alcove near the observation deck. He stood alone, looking out at the endless darkness of space. His hands were clasped behind his back, and his posture was straight and still. He did not seem anxious or worried. He seemed like a man who had already made peace with whatever was about to happen. Ambassador Carter said, approaching carefully, "May I have a moment of your time?" Carter turned to face her. His expression softened slightly, becoming almost friendly. "Of course, Counselor, your people have always been kind to us." "I have come to understand," said, "not to argue or to change your mind. I simply wish to understand why your species would choose this path when negotiation offers a clear and less costly alternative." Carter studied her for a long moment. Then he gestured toward the stars outside the window. "Tell me, Counselor, how many worlds does your species inhabit?" 17, answered, "plus numerous stations and outposts." "And if they took 40,000 of your people from one of those worlds, what would your government do?" Considered the question carefully. "We would negotiate. We would seek to recover as many as possible while minimizing the overall cost to our species. Perhaps we would not get everyone back, but we would avoid the greater tragedy of war." "And the next time someone took your people, would you negotiate again?" "Yes, of course. It is the logical path." Carter nodded slowly. "That is where humanity differs. We do not view these situations through the lens of mathematics alone. To us, every single one of those 40,000 people has a name, a family, a story. They are not numbers to be calculated. They are not acceptable losses." He turned back to the window. "Counselor, humanity has been fighting wars for as long as we have existed. We know the cost. We have buried more of our own kind than most species have ever produced. We understand exactly what we are risking, but we also understand something that the rest of the galaxy seems to have forgotten." "And what is that?" "That some things are worth fighting for. That there are lines you do not cross, no matter the cost. That the moment you start treating your own people as bargaining chips, you have already lost something more valuable than any war could take from you." His compound eyes reflected the starlight as she processed his words. "But surely compromise is better than destruction. Surely some sacrifice is preferable to the devastation that war brings." Carter smiled, but there was no joy in it. "They believe that too. They believe that because the Council has always negotiated, we will also negotiate. They took our people because they assumed we would pay their price to get them back. And if we do that, if we reward their aggression with compromise, what happens next? They take more of our people. Someone else sees that it worked and tries the same thing. Your system of negotiation has taught every species in this galaxy that kidnapping is an acceptable opening move." He faced directly. "We are not here to play that game. We are here to end it, forever." Meanwhile, in the delegation's quarters, Prime was receiving reports from his. The news was troubling. Human warships had indeed taken position exactly where Admiral Morgan had said they would be. Long-range sensors showed 47 vessels arranged in a precise attack formation, their weapons powered and ready. "It is a bluff," Prime insisted. "They would not dare attack us. The Council would condemn them. They would be outcast from galactic society." His military advisor, a veteran named, was less certain. "Ambassador, I have studied human military history. They are not bluffing. When humans threaten violence, they mean it." "Then we will crush them. Our fleet is larger, our technology is older and more refined. They cannot possibly defeat us." Pulled up tactical data on a display screen. "Our fleet is larger, yes, but look at their formation. They are not targeting our main fleet. They are targeting our infrastructure. Shipyards, fuel depots, communication arrays. If they strike first, they could cripple our ability to wage a prolonged war in a matter of hours." Prime stared at the display. His mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of growing agitation. "Surely the Council will intervene. They cannot allow one species to threaten another with war. The Council has never faced this situation before. They have no rules for what to do when someone simply refuses to negotiate. And our own position is weak. We took the colonists without provocation. Many species are already whispering that we brought this upon ourselves. Back in the main chamber, delegates began to filter back in for the continuation of the session. The atmosphere had changed completely. Fear hung in the air like a physical presence. Species that had considered humanity to be young and harmless now looked at the human delegation with new eyes. Admiral Morgan sat at the human table, reviewing data on a small device. Her face showed no emotion. Beside her, Ambassador Carter waited patiently for the session to resume. High Counselor took his position at the center of the chamber. His scales had settled into a grim gray color, the shade of resignation. The Council recognizes that we are in unprecedented territory, he announced. We call upon both parties to consider the consequences of their positions and to find a path toward resolution. Prime stood, his four arms gesturing broadly. The Dominion is prepared to offer generous terms for the return of the human colonists. We propose a full exchange. All colonists returned, in exchange for exclusive mining rights in 3 human-controlled asteroid fields and a formal alliance treaty. He looked at the human delegation expectantly. Admiral Morgan did not even look up from her device. You now have 11 hours and 43 minutes, she said. The hours passed slowly. Throughout the council station, beings of every species watched the countdown with growing dread. News of the human ultimatum had spread across the galaxy, carried by faster-than-light communication networks to every inhabited world. On 1,000 planets, trillions of intelligent beings waited to see what would happen when the timer reached 0. In the observation lounge near the main chamber, a group of junior delegates had gathered to discuss the crisis. They came from 6 different species, and under normal circumstances, they would have been friendly with each other. But now they stood in separate clusters, eyeing the 2 human junior diplomats who stood alone by the window. One of the humans was a young man named. He was only 28 years old, new to the diplomatic service, and completely unprepared for what was happening. His hands trembled slightly as he held his coffee cup, and his eyes kept darting to the countdown display on the wall. "Are you afraid?" asked a voice beside him. Turned to see a young female approaching. Her scales were pale green, a sign of youth, and her eyes held genuine curiosity rather than hostility. "Terrified," admitted. "I joined the diplomatic corps because I wanted to build bridges between species. I never expected to be part of something like this." The tilted her head. "Then why do you not try to stop it? Why do your leaders refuse to compromise?" Thought about the question carefully. He had grown up on Earth, in a small town where everyone knew everyone else. He remembered his grandfather telling stories about wars fought long ago, about the soldiers who never came home, about the principles that were worth dying for. "Because some things matter more than safety," he said finally. "Those colonists on 22B, they trusted us to protect them. They left Earth and traveled across the stars because they believed in humanity's future. And now 40,000 of them are sitting in holding cells, wondering if anyone is coming for them." He met the eyes. "If we negotiate, if we trade their freedom for mining rights or political favors, what message does that send? That humanity will sell out its own people when the price is right, that our promises of protection mean nothing. But surely their lives are worth more than your principles." "Their lives are exactly why we have these principles. Every single one of those people deserves to know that their government will move heaven and earth to bring them home, not because it is convenient, not because the cost is acceptable, but because they are ours and we do not abandon our own." Across the galaxy, similar conversations were taking place. On the bridge of the human battleship Defiance, Captain Maria Santos stood before her crew and delivered a briefing that would be recorded for history. "In approximately 9 hours, we may be ordered to begin combat operations against the Dominion," she said. Her voice was calm and clear, the voice of a woman who had commanded starships for 20 years. "I will not lie to you. Some of us will not survive what comes next. The fleet is larger than ours, and they have more experience in space warfare." She paused, looking at the faces of her crew. They were young and old, men and women, officers and enlisted. They came from every continent on Earth, every culture, every background, and they were all watching her with complete attention. But we are not fighting for territory or resources or political advantage. We are fighting for 40,000 of our brothers and sisters who were stolen from their homes in the middle of the night. We are fighting to prove that humanity keeps its promises. We are fighting because some things are worth dying for. She straightened her shoulders. "If they do not return our people, we will attack. We will strike hard and fast, and we will not stop until our people are safe or until we have nothing left to give. That is who we are. That has always been who we are." The crew responded with a roar of approval that echoed through the corridors of the ship. Back on the council station, the delegation was beginning to crack. Prime had spent hours trying to rally support from other species, demanding that the council condemn humanity's threats and impose sanctions. But the response had been disappointing. "You took their people first," Counselor had told him bluntly. "You created this situation. We are not going to punish the humans for reacting to your aggression." "But they are threatening war, actual military conflict. This is barbaric." "Perhaps, but you started it." The ambassador retreated to his quarters in fury. His advisors gathered around him, their voices low and urgent. "Ambassador, we must consider our options carefully," said. "The humans are not backing down. Every hour that passes, they become more committed to their course of action. And frankly, our position is not as strong as we believed." "What do you mean?" Activated a holographic display showing the current state of military forces. "When we planned this operation, we assumed the humans would negotiate like every other species. We positioned our ships accordingly, spreading them across our territory to maintain normal defensive postures. The humans, on the other hand, have concentrated their entire available fleet in one location, aimed directly at our most valuable targets. So we call our ships back. We concentrate our forces and meet them in battle. That would take at least 18 hours. They are attacking in less than 9. The room fell silent. For the first time, genuine fear flickered across Prime's face. "Are you saying we cannot stop them?" "I am saying that if they attack in 9 hours, they will cause enormous damage before we can respond effectively. They will destroy shipyards that took decades to build. They will cripple production facilities that supply half our fleet. They will kill thousands of our people. Then we attack first. We strike before they can execute their plan." Shook his head. "Our ships are not in position, and even if they were, the humans have made clear that any aggressive action on our part will be considered the same as refusing their demands. They will attack anyway, and we will have lost any chance of resolving this peacefully." Prime sank into his chair, his massive body suddenly looking old and tired. "What would you have me do? Give in to their demands? Show the entire galaxy that the Dominion can be bullied by a species that joined the Council less than 20 years ago? I would have you consider what matters more, Ambassador, our pride or our survival." The advisor leaned forward, his voice dropping to barely a whisper. "The humans are not like us. They are not like anyone we have ever encountered. They do not calculate costs and benefits the way we do. They do not weigh lives against resources. When they say they will fight to the last ship, I believe them. When they say they will never abandon their people, I believe them." He gestured toward the window, toward the stars where human warships waited. "We thought we were dealing with another species that could be manipulated through the usual methods. We were wrong, and now we must decide whether we are willing to pay the price of that mistake." 6 hours remained on the countdown. The council chamber had become a place of barely controlled panic. Delegates moved in and out constantly, receiving updates from their home worlds, sending urgent messages to their governments. The air felt thick with tension, as if the entire station was holding its breath. Ambassador Daniel Carter had not moved from his position. He sat at the human delegation's table with Admiral Morgan beside him, watching the other species scramble to understand what was happening. He felt no satisfaction in their confusion. He took no pleasure in their fear, but he also felt no doubt about what he was doing. 17 years ago, when humanity first made contact with alien life, there had been celebrations across Earth. People danced in the streets, wept with joy, embraced strangers in the shared wonder of knowing they were not alone in the universe. Daniel had been a young man then, fresh out of university, full of idealistic dreams about humanity taking its place among the stars. He had learned much in the years since. He had learned that the galaxy was not the utopia humanity had imagined. He had learned that the Council's system of negotiation and compromise often meant that the strong could take what they wanted from the weak, as long as they were willing to give back just enough to avoid real consequences. He had learned that most species viewed morality as a luxury to be discarded when it became inconvenient. And he had learned that humanity was different, not better necessarily, not wiser or more noble, but different in ways that the galaxy had never encountered before. Admiral Morgan touched his arm gently. "They are requesting a private meeting," she said quietly. "Prime wants to speak with us alone." Carter nodded. "Let him come." The meeting took place in a small conference room off the main chamber. Prime entered alone, his usual attendants left behind. The massive alien looked diminished somehow, his armor plates dull under the artificial lights. "Ambassador Carter," Prime began. His translator conveyed exhaustion along with his words. "I have come to understand the position of the Dominion." Carter remained silent, waiting. "We are prepared to return all human colonists immediately," Prime continued. "No conditions, no demands. We ask only that your fleets withdraw once the transfer is complete." For a long moment, Carter did not respond. Then he turned to Admiral Morgan. "Admiral." Morgan shook her head slowly. "That is not acceptable." Prime's mandibles clicked in confusion. "What more do you want? We are giving you everything you demanded." "You are giving us what you should never have taken in the first place," Morgan said coldly. "That is not a gift. That is not a concession. That is basic decency, which you failed to show when you attacked a peaceful colony and kidnapped 40,000 innocent people." She leaned forward, her eyes boring into the ambassador. "The colonists will be returned first. All of them. They will be transported to a neutral station where our medical teams can verify their condition. Only after every single person is confirmed safe and unharmed will we even consider withdrawing our forces. And then we will discuss what comes next. But understand this clearly, Ambassador. Humanity does not forget. We do not forgive easily. What you have done here today will have consequences that last for generations." Prime seemed to shrink even further. He had come hopping to end this crisis with a simple exchange. He was beginning to realize that the damage he had caused could not be so easily repaired. "What do you want from us?" he asked, his voice barely audible. Carter finally spoke. "We want you to remember. We want every species in this galaxy to remember. Taking human citizens is not a negotiating tactic. It is not a political strategy. It is an act of war, and we will respond accordingly every single time, no matter the cost." He stood up, looking down at the defeated ambassador. "Return our people now, while you still have the chance." 4 hours later, the transfer began. Transport ships carried the colonists to a space station that had been hastily designated as neutral territory. Human medical teams waited there, ready to examine every man, woman, and child who came through the airlocks. On the station, a woman named Bate Parker ran through the corridors, searching desperately for her family. She had been separated from her husband and 2 children when the first attacked their colony. For 3 weeks, she had not known if they were alive or dead. Bait over here." She heard her husband's voice before she saw him. Jack Parker stood at the end of a crowded hallway, holding their daughter Amy in his arms while their son Tommy clung to his leg. They were thin and tired, their clothes dirty and torn, but they were alive. Bait crashed into them like a wave hitting the shore. She wrapped her arms around all three of them and held on as if she would never let go again. Tears streamed down her face as she kissed her children, touched their hair, breathed in their familiar scent. "I thought I lost you," she whispered. "I thought I would never see you again." "Mom, the soldiers came for us," Tommy said, his voice shaking. "They said the humans were coming. They said our people were coming to take us home." "That is right, baby. That is exactly right. Our people came for us. They never gave up." All around them, similar scenes played out. Families reunited after weeks of separation. Friends embraced, crying and laughing at the same time. Elderly colonists who had feared they would die in custody found themselves surrounded by the warm lights of a human station. Back at the council station, delegates watched the footage of the reunions on massive display screens. They saw the tears, heard the cries of joy, witnessed the overwhelming relief of people who had been returned to freedom. And slowly, the full weight of what humanity had accomplished began to sink in. "They risked everything," Counselor said softly. "They risked their entire fleet, their standing in the council, potentially their very existence as a spacefaring species. And they did it for 40,000 people." Beside her, a delegate from the species nodded slowly. "We would never do such a thing. The cost would be too high." "Perhaps," replied, "but look at those families. Look at those children in their parents' arms. Would any cost really be too high for that?" They had no answer. Admiral Morgan received confirmation that all colonists had been safe. She looked at Ambassador Carter, who nodded slightly. Then she opened a communication channel to the human fleet. "All vessels, this is Admiral Morgan. Stand down from attack positions. Our people are safe. Repeat, our people are safe." Across space, 47 warships began to power down their weapons. But they did not leave. They remained in position, a silent reminder of what humanity was willing to do when its people were threatened. And in the council chamber, no one could look at the human delegation the same way again. 1 week passed. The galaxy slowly returned to something like normal, but everyone knew that normal would never quite be the same again. The Dominion had withdrawn from public affairs entirely, their government in chaos, their military humiliated without a single shot being fired. Prime had resigned his position and disappeared into exile on a remote colony world. The council called a formal session to address the aftermath of the crisis. Every species sent their highest-ranking representatives. The chamber was filled to capacity, with observers watching from stations across 12 star systems. Everyone wanted to see what the humans would say. Ambassador Daniel Carter entered the chamber alone this time. Admiral Morgan had returned to Earth, her mission complete. Carter walked to the center of the room with the same calm confidence he had shown throughout the crisis. He looked older than he had a week ago, as if the weight of what he had done had aged him in ways that could not be measured in days. High Counselor welcomed him formally. "Ambassador Carter, the Council recognizes your presence. We have called this session to discuss the implications of recent events and to determine how the galactic community should proceed." Carter bowed his head slightly in acknowledgement. "Thank you, High Counselor. I will speak briefly, and then I will answer whatever questions the Council wishes to ask." He turned slowly, looking at every delegation in turn. His eyes moved from the tall, crystalline from the massive bulk of the few remaining representatives to the delicate, flower-like beings of the collective. Each species watched him with a mixture of fear, curiosity, and something that might have been respect. 1 week ago, I stood in this chamber and announced that humanity would not negotiate for the return of our people. Many of you were shocked by this. Many of you were frightened. Some of you were angry. I understand all of these reactions." He paused, gathering his thoughts. For 300 cycles, the Council has maintained peace through a system of compromise and negotiation. This system has worked in its way. Wars have been prevented. Conflicts have been resolved. Species that might have destroyed each other have instead learned to coexist. But this system has also taught a dangerous lesson. It has taught that aggression can be rewarded, that kidnapping and extortion are acceptable tools of diplomacy, that lives can be traded like cargo as long as everyone is polite about it. He shook his head slowly. Humanity cannot accept this lesson. We will not accept it. We came to the stars believing in certain principles that have guided our species through thousands of years of history. We believe that every person has value. We believe that governments exist to protect their citizens, not to sacrifice them for political convenience. We believe that there are some things worth fighting for and some lines that must never be crossed. These beliefs are not optional for us. They are not preferences that can be set aside when they become inconvenient. They are the very foundation of who we are as a species. He stepped forward, his voice growing stronger. "I want to be clear about something. Humanity does not seek war. We do not want conflict with any species in this council. We came here hoping to be friends, allies, partners in the great adventure of exploring the universe together. But we will not purchase friendship with the lives of our people. We will not sacrifice our principles to fit into a system that treats kidnapping as a normal part of politics. We will not pretend that everything is acceptable as long as everyone eventually sits down to talk about it." He spread his hands. "So here is what humanity offers to the Council. We offer our technology, which we have been developing quietly for 17 years while we watched and learned. We offer our resources, which include rich asteroid fields and colonies on a dozen worlds. We offer our culture, our art, our science, our dreams. We offer friendship to any species that wishes to treat us with respect and dignity. But we also offer a warning." His voice dropped to something just above a whisper, but in the silent chamber, everyone heard every word. "If you threaten our people, if you take our citizens, if you believe that humans can be intimidated or bullied into compliance, you will face consequences. Not negotiations, not sanctions, not diplomatic expressions of concern. You will face the full weight of humanity's determination to protect what is ours." He straightened, looking directly at High Counselor. "They made a mistake. They believed that we were like other species. They believed that we would calculate the costs and decide that negotiation was the safer path. They were wrong, and now every species in this galaxy knows they were wrong. I hope that no one else makes the same mistake. I truly do. Because the next time, we will not stand down when our people are returned. The next time, we will make sure that no one ever considers taking human citizens again." The chamber remained silent for a long moment after he finished speaking. Then, slowly, Counselor rose from her seat. "Ambassador Carter," she said, "I have a question. Not for the record, but for my own understanding. Why? Why does humanity value individual lives so highly that you would risk everything for them?" Carter smiled, and for the first time in days, there was genuine warmth in his expression. "Because each of those 40,000 people has a story. Each of them has dreams, fears, loves, losses. Each of them matters to someone. When I was a child, my grandfather told me that the measure of a society is how it treats its weakest and most vulnerable members. Those colonists had no warships to protect them. They had no political power to defend themselves. All they had was the promise that their government would never abandon them." He looked around the chamber one final time. "Humanity keeps its promises. That is who we are. That is who we will always be." In the years that followed, the Council changed. Species that had once treated aggression as a normal part of politics became more careful. Disputes were resolved through genuine negotiation rather than through threats and hostage-taking. The system of compromise continued, but it was built on a new foundation, one that recognized certain lines that could not be crossed. And humanity took its place among the stars, not as the youngest and weakest member of the galactic community, but as something new, something that the Council had never seen before, a species that valued its people above its own survival, a species that kept its promises, no matter the cost. Some called them dangerous, some called them unpredictable, some whispered that they were terrifying in ways that logical analysis. But those who knew them best called them something else entirely. They called them friends. And in a galaxy that had forgotten what true loyalty looked like, that was the most powerful thing of all. The humans had come to the stars expecting to learn from the older, wiser species of the Council. In the end, it was the Council that learned from them. They learned that some things are worth more than safety. They learned that some principles cannot be negotiated. They learned that in a universe of cold calculations and political convenience, there was still room for honor, for loyalty, and for love. The colonists of 22B returned to their homes. They rebuilt what had been destroyed. They planted new gardens, raised new children, and told stories about the day when humanity stood before the most powerful gathering in the galaxy and said no. And whenever anyone asked what made humans different, they always answered the same way. They came for us. When the whole galaxy said it was not worth the cost, they came for us anyway. That is who they are. That is why we are proud to be human.